Welcome back to Time of Death. As always, this video is for informational purposes only and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murder of Caitlin Avila. Caitlin Avila died Sunday, September 24, 2006 after being shot in the Baldwin Hills, Crenshaw district, according to LA County coroner records. Jonathan Banks and LaRon Larrymore were subsequently charged and convicted of murder. The following is the evidence at trial. In September 2006, Cesar Avila was living in an apartment on Pinafore Street in Los Angeles with his wife and their two young daughters, 5-year-old Casey and 3-year-old Caitlin. Avila had never been arrested or involved in a criminal street gang. On the afternoon of Sunday, September 24, 2006, Avila, Casey, and Caitlin went shopping and then to a fast food restaurant before returning home in Avila's car at around 2:45 p.m. Both Caitlin and Casey were seated in the back seat of the car, with Caitlin sitting directly behind Avila and Casey sitting beside her. Avila parked in front of his apartment building by the main entrance and began to exit his car. As Avila stepped out of his car, a silver 4-door vehicle came to a stop right beside him. The front passenger window was rolled down and the rear windows were tinted. A person in the front passenger seat who was about 2 feet away from Avila shouted out, "F-18." Avila turned around and observed the passenger and the driver. Both were black men, and the passenger wore his hair in braids. The passenger shouted out, "Black pea stones," pulled out a gun with his right hand, and fired one shot at Avila from the vehicle. The bullet struck Avila in his chest. Immediately upon being shot, Avila began running toward his apartment building. Believing that the shooter would follow, the shooter exited the vehicle and then fired a second shot at Avila, but struck Avila in his hand. Avila collapsed in the courtyard area of his apartment complex, where his wife and neighbors came to assist him. At trial, Avila identified Banks as the shooter and Larrymore as the driver. Marvin Barahona was standing near the intersection of Pinafore Street and Cocoa Avenue at the time of the shooting. Upon hearing a single loud gunshot, he looked up and saw a gray car stop beside a blue car. A black man with a gun exited the front passenger seat of the gray car and began chasing a Hispanic man toward the apartment building. The man with the gun had braids and was wearing a black hooded sweatshirt, white shirt, and black pants. Barahona heard a second shot and then saw the man with the gun come back toward the blue car. The man opened the left rear passenger door of the blue car, pointed his gun inside the car, and fired one shot directly into it. He then appeared to grab an object from the ground before getting back into the front passenger seat of the gray car. The car sped away with its tires screeching. As Barahona called 911, he ran over to the blue car and saw a little girl lying on the ground covered in blood. At Banks' retrial, Barahona identified Banks as the shooter. Barahona and other neighborhood residents tried to resuscitate Caitlin while waiting for medical assistance to arrive. Caitlin subsequently died of a single gunshot wound to the chest. The bullet struck Caitlin in the upper left side of her chest and exited at her lower right back. The trajectory of the bullet was from left to right, front to back, and downward. It perforated Caitlin's heart and both lungs, ultimately causing her death. LAPD Detective Stanley Smith, the lead investigating officer on the case, testified that police collected ballistic evidence from the crime scene following the shooting. A single 9mm casing was recovered by the rear of Avila's car. A single bullet was recovered from the inside of Avila's car in the right rear passenger door. Shortly after the shooting, Avila was being transported to the hospital in an ambulance. He provided the police with a description of the shooter as a black man in a gray vehicle. Avila also said that someone in the vehicle had shouted out, "Black pea stones." On October 3, 2006, while he was in the hospital, Avila was shown 2 six-pack photographic lineups that included photographs of Larrymore and Banks. At that time, Avila identified Larrymore as the driver and Banks as the shooter. During the course of the investigation, Detective Evans decided that any Black Pea Stone member who came in contact with the police should be interviewed about the shooting. On September 29, 2006, Detective Evans interviewed Black Pea Stone member Kerry Cahy about the shooting following his arrest for grand theft auto. In a videotape interview, Cahy told Detective Evans that both Banks and Larrymore had called him after the shooting and had admitted to Cahy that Larrymore was the driver and Banks was the shooter. Following the interview, Cahy was released from custody and later charged with taking a vehicle without the owner's consent. On October 6, 2006, Larrymore was arrested at a motel in LA County. During a search of his motel room, officers recovered rental receipts in Larrymore's name for a silver Chrysler Pacifica, which showed that the vehicle had been rented on September 9 and returned on September 25, 2006. There was also gang graffiti found in a dresser drawer in Larrymore's room that included references to August Street and Boogie. On October 6, 2006, Officers executed a search warrant at Banks' residence and recovered photographs depicting Banks and other individuals dressed in gang attire and making gang signs. Banks was arrested in San Bernardino County on October 10, 2006, based on information provided by his father. After deliberating for 3 days, the jury found Larry Moore guilty of the second-degree murder of Caitlin and guilty of the attempted willful, deliberate, and premeditated murder of Avila, with true findings on the firearm enhancements and gang enhancements alleged as to each of those counts. The jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict as to Larry Moore on the count of attempted murder of Casey, and the trial court declared a mistrial as to that count. In addition, the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict as to Banks on all counts, and a mistrial was declared as to each count alleged against Banks. The trial court sentenced Larry Moore to a total term of 72 years to life in state prison. As to the second-degree murder of Caitlin, Larry Moore was sentenced to a term of 15 years to life, plus 25 years to life based on the firearm enhancements. As to the attempted murder of Avila, Larry Moore was sentenced to a consecutive term of 7 years to life, plus 25 years to life based on the firearm enhancements. At the conclusion of the retrial, the jury found Banks guilty of the first-degree murder of Caitlin, the attempted willful, deliberate, and premeditated murder of Avila, and the attempted willful, deliberate, and premeditated murder of Casey. The jury also made true findings on the firearm enhancements and gang enhancements alleged as to each count. The trial court sentenced Banks to a total state prison term of 75 years to life, plus a consecutive and indeterminate life term. As to the first-degree murder of Caitlin, Banks was sentenced to a term of 25 years to life, plus 25 years to life based on the firearm enhancement. As to the attempted murder of Avila, Banks was sentenced to a consecutive indeterminate life term, plus 25 years to life based on the firearm enhancements. As to the attempted murder of Casey, Banks was sentenced to a concurrent indeterminate life term, plus 25 years to life based on the firearm enhancements. Caitlin Avila was 3 years old at the time of death.